Okay, hi everyone. Ni hao bonjour to the portal world, and this is to understand and the synopsis as is written in the chat box. Blockchain in 2025 and beyond, and understanding the monetization process in terms of how World Wide Web can be utilized to monetize and be used in a manner whereby it is a very useful module in terms of understanding the it's very interesting stuff which I'm going to discuss today, and this can be deployed on the Impala network in many ways. So here it goes. So first of all, as we said, we have been training these small language modules and trying to understand the nomenclature of stuff which has a lot of value right now. Um, at the same point of time, the need of the hour is to understand the understanding of what blockchain is at the first stance itself. Because if we just go by the operator news, there are three major, I would say, obstacles right now, or let's take it as three obstacles in terms of um combating the data sector, both for the online world and in the offline world, and trying to balance it out with nature, that is blockchain. Now, the point of contention here is what are we trying to achieve in 2025 and beyond, stating the current state of affairs at a global level. There is one agency, that is United Nations. There is something called as NATO. There is one stakeholder group, operators, civil society, that all in some parts is part of United Nations. At the other end of the spectrum, we have operators who are always operating the world the way they wish to, and there's third, which is the new world order, where there's no one group of operators. There are multiple group of operators trying to orchestrate in the best possible manner, and that is where you would be seeing this word chaos, good chaos, in the online world or in the offline world. And for that, understanding of science has to be there. Without having very deep understanding of sciences, most of the folks won't be able to appreciate the current state of affairs, and particularly from the standpoint view of entropy. So although loads of people are just becoming writers and just utilizing synthetic data to orchestrate their book writing format, orchestrating stories. So understand this. All these typical, these three-letter word LLM, which is supposed to be large language model in one way, other is it's kind of a master of law. Um, in another sector of understanding of the spectrum. However, the data set which is being pushed, if a generalized question is being asked, it is very clear to the masses that it is artificially fed data, which is synthetic in nature, and that is not upgrading as such the real upgrade or the upskill for either of the spectrum group. Okay, let's talk about one of the defense methodology which can be utilized for creating the sets. So we'll start with the tagging part. And wherever there's tagging, there has to be communication signals in place. Now, when we talk about communication signals in place, communication signals itself can be of so many types, right? And folks who really understand communication, and particularly telecommunication, would be able to appreciate the kind of work we have been doing for more than 2 decades. Honestly speaking, a lot of applications back and forth were filed over the years, and the fun part is being in the orchestration group of that framework, whereby the understanding is a lot of garbage was coming to us. When I say garbage, garbage is just maybe a handwritten note, and that is being converted into something called as what we call in our world ideation disclosure form, although that might not sound like an invention, because if somebody says, okay, let's deploy 3 resistors, 5 capacitors, 3 sensors and all that nuance, and this is supposed to execute this. So one hypothesis is something called as prior art search, and this kind of whole knowledge process outsourcing was initially outsourced to India post 1999 when the bubble burst happened in US. And in the initial years, nobody knew anything. I mean, the best of the best. And honestly speaking, we are sitting in 2025. It's difficult to relate with the kind of work we have done in the last 2 decades as far as telecommunication network is concerned, or whether the MIMO and the MIMO networks and the meeting of US with Malaysia. And let me tell you, a lot of stuff is not in the public domain. Everything is a trade secret. And I'm like, many a times I'm trying to search my own work, because I did that way back somewhere from 2007 to 2010. That's not there in the online world. And I was like, oh my gosh, what I had done. Because all those prior art search, all those FTOs. So FTO is a terminology for freedom to operate, as far as do you have the freedom to operate a particular tech in a particular jurisdiction. However, the new world order is altogether different, which is trade secret. It is not what you file with the authorities. It is what you keep as a trade secret is going to facilitate the agenda items of 2030. I'm a very big advocate of achieving the sustainable goals, because nature has given its word, and now it is at a, I think the nature has built the wall so high in terms of the blockchain and the others. Tech around biomimicry, tech around relating with the nature is the real blockchain, which is working right now, irrespective of the human interventions, which is going nowhere, because there is a very big understanding as to how nature has given us everything one can even think of in zillion ways. Okay, so let's now understand the classification first, and then we'll understand this defense method for the execution stuff, and let's see how this small language models, which is very proprietary in nature, with the right input data, with the right candidates identified, that is where the magic is going to happen. Nothing else is going to work. Just getting, food cloud kitchens online is not a business. These kind of unorganized sector was very much in place at any given point of time in last, so on the timeline we are on 2025. 100 years ago also people were okay, add a question sticker. Okay, myth you believed too long. Okay, I'll answer this and I'll get back to the defense. Myth, okay, what I understood, and it opened a new portal for me altogether, was traveling to Sri Lanka. And there it is, the myth or whatever the discussion has been over the years, there it is said in Sri Lanka that Sita is daughter of Ravana. So the whole story of what India is orchestrating, or whatever has been orchestrated in the books, it is two ends of the spectrums. What is right, what is wrong, it's a debatable question. But I have spent my time in Nurailia. I spent my time in Ashok Vatika, the way I could understand, and that has given me a kind of path just to figure out things the way I have to in terms of observation, because being a lawyer, that too in tech for so long, and orchestrating so much tech at any given point of time, I think I'm blessed and I'm happy to be there. And the myth is, What is the actual story is the myth. Okay, if you want to answer, somebody can answer. So this is done. Next, let's talk about the coding part. So the coding part here is knowledge process outsourcing. That is something called as KPO. Um, there's something called as knowledge engineering, and there's something called as knowledge acquisition. Um, the word knowledge engineering itself, I think it can have zillion meanings. It can be an OPD altogether. OPD is particularly a one-page document which states the functionality of, for me, like maybe today, knowledge engineering, if I write the OPD, it will be different. If you ask me tomorrow, after 24 hours, it will be different. If you ask me after a week, it would be different. Because folks who really, really, really went very deep into tech, and particularly reading, writing, understanding, orchestrating over the years, are the real gems in terms of best of the capabilities to understand the new world order. So this knowledge engineering and knowledge acquisition, this is tagged along, or the hash would be in this case G06N5 slash 022. Then we have, okay, so when we talk about signaling, there's something called as alarm. Alarm is kind of a frequency of sound which is orchestrated to make folks aware or the candidates aware about a particular hypothesis in terms of an event. That is G06B25 slash 10 alarm systems, in which the location of the alarm condition is signaled to a central station. Say, for example, it can be any of the telegraphic systems characterized by a transmission medium using wireless transmission systems. So systems is always a combination of modules, submodules, servers, communication networks, admins. That's it. It's not a big jargon to be understood. Next, we have predictive alarm systems. The predictive alarm systems is basically extrapolation or other computation using updated historic data. And I've been very vocal about it, that the new world order is all about the historical data set and the environmental factors. And environmental factors are particularly where do you spend your time in the offline world? Where is your office situated? Are you working in a, you're going to office, going through that phase of, putting yourself through that route and reaching from one destination to the other. So those are the action items any candidate is performing, or it's a control at any given point of time. A lot of emphasis has been given on the word commune right now, in terms of, even I'm of the opinion that the new world order has to collate the folks or the individual candidates and keep them in a commune 24 cross 7 with their own consent, that hey, you are signing this up for next maybe 5-10 years, and try and figure out and open up opportunities to understand this new world order in terms of upskilling, because machine has taken over. We like it or not, the matrix is real. Machine has taken it over. More individuals are going to lose their job because their upskill was not done the way it had to during the lockdown, that is 2020, 1st of April 2020 onwards. Then we have multiple cameras. So this is an IoT condition. So for the IoT condition, we have G06B13 slash 19645. And these cameras are having a view of a plurality of events. For example, multi-room surveillance or tracking in. Candidate can be an object in some ways by view hand over. So there's something called as FERC. FERC stands for Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Now, the word energy itself is not understood by many. Um, how renewable resources can be utilized. I have been talking about energy harvesting with the renewable stuff, utilizing the nature as a blockchain, and at the same point of time, understanding that if you are deploying silicon looping itself is a major obstacle as far as the weather condition goes. Even if you have the biggest of the, or I would say, uh, there's one particular geography which has a lot of sunlight, but the utilization is not proper. So I'll give you one example. In Nura Elia itself, in Sri Lanka, this place, there is an artificial pond. So artificial pond is basically, it was a vacant land which was converted into a water body because very simple submission for the cloud formation is evaporation of water. I mean, that's one of the simplest experiment which is, at least in our school time, in our early years, this experiment was very simple, where there's something called as condensation, then evaporation, and that is one reason you would be seeing there is more rainfall. So okay, there is rainfall because of the latitude and the longitude. There is rainfall because of the commission of work which is performed in that particular area. So it's a very simple thing, but not understood by many, because most of the government organizations globally are driven in the manner, what's in for me, what is the caveat I'm getting out of what I sanction or I commission. So the very basis of blockchain is, it is without corruption. And what is corruption? That's not the question I wish to answer, but this is what it is. And one needs to look into the understanding of FERC, that is a regulatory commission. Look into it, and probably you'll get more insight. So this is basically a design thinking around design basis threat spectrum. So we are talking about the spectrum here, but it's a design basis threat spectrum. So it can be DBTS. So let's see, what do we have? Okay, I'll do the analysis for this, and that's the synopsis for this understanding of this discussion. So this is rule based. Let me go through the figures. There's something interesting. Okay, so particularly candidate in the loop. The understanding here is the orchestration is such, we take the candidate in a loop, and because it's like, I don't know how many people have played those games. I don't want to give a nomenclature here because I'm not paid for that in any sense whatsoever. But you have these laser stuff, there are obstacles, you don't have to touch that. If you touch that, there are consequences. That actually increases your observation skills, and I have we have our own proprietary stuff where we play these games and just become a better versions. So there's a control room, we have candidate in a loop, and there's an application system, and okay, communication, module, panel, screen displays. Okay, screen display is nothing but the UI, that is user interface. So SD, you can, in one way you can say screen display is equal to UI, that is user interface. The third one would be, okay, so a number of sensors are deployed, and these sensors are actually providing the data, which is actuator data, or countermeasure data, which is facilitating to identify the occurrence of an event, and that itself is identification of threat via sort. I mean, that's my favorite. I mean, I love sort analysis. If somebody has to ask me what I can talk about at a stretch, that is sort. I can just do sort of anything and everything, because whenever I was doing prior art searches, and oh my gosh, the kind of prior art searches I have done, oh, I think that's another book altogether if I ever think of writing on it. So this threat via sort is utilized for the machine intelligence to be used as a data, that is actuator data and countermeasure data. Then we are developing situational awareness. This can be part of the CERT. CERT is basically cybersecurity protocols to identify the threats. And then we are generating countermeasures with probability or probabilistic outcomes. What can be the outcomes? And decision rules are selected based on the best countermeasure. So a lot of drilling or grilling is undergone, because these are all hypothetical scenarios which are fed at any given point of time. And the good thing is, if you're performing the drill and then you are taking the measurement of the parameters in terms of the healthcare parameters of the individuals who are identified, they become better version of themselves, and they're able to these kind of situations in real life. And then we have executing the countermeasure stuff. Then what else? Surveillance cameras. It's simple, nothing much to be delivered here. Okay. When we're talking about non-lethal countermeasure actuators, we have heat rays, heat map, sonic, subsonic, laser dazzler, chemicals, and the others. And we have target engagement maps to perform the trajectory information and assess the operator with geospatial information. And there is sensor fusion, combining the characteristics and the trajectory data from different sensors in a manner that exploits the best information from each of the sensor type. In terms of what kind of data information is being retrieved from the sensor is something we are trying to answer through the deployment of this kind of methodology at the first instance itself. And this is one of the use case studies of HACCP, that is hazard analysis critical control point. Okay, what about this? It's a kind of one case scenario could be rapid response unit, if any. Okay, this is done. We were trying to understand this. What happened to this? Okay. So we talked about DBT. DBT here stands for design basis threats, pre-modeled archetypes, which is able to identify the sabotage people, the protesters, the drones, and it is able to identify the events, prediction, and response planning way in advance. So any kind of threat can be converted in an opportunity, and this is very important for countries like India and China, stating the fact India has a lot of talent. Talent in means real talent pool. When not if the talent pool is recognized, that is more important, because talent is not in the college. Talent is not the family the person is coming from. Talent is to have the understanding of their historical data set and the environmental data set as to what has been their own design thinking to resolve the problems at issue. I mean, my favorite question, just to end this synopsis, would be to understand the behavior of the candidate in a context which is not at all allocated for what they are being hired for, but just to understand, are they are coachable. If you're not coachable enough, like honestly speaking, I'm not a coachable person, because to be in that position, you have to be a very different data set. I'm not that. However, but if you're giving me a problem statement, and if that problem statement excites me, I'll identify the right folks and work as a team to resolve the issues at hand. I did it earlier before the lockdown also. Perhaps each of the candidate who has worked with me in any capacity, they are all they all still have their jobs. uh, some have become entrepreneurs in their own small data set. So that is how we love to work in terms of understanding the design thinking basis. But if I just have to end this conversation, it would be DBT, which is design basis threat, which is basically models around the SWOT analysis to identify the threats way in advance, which is a use case study for the Impala network, and then work around it so that that particular futuristic event never happens. And that is part of the Impala network patent application, which is already in the public domain. And of course, it's a trade secret. And we are very excited about that launch at a global scale, when not if. But yes, the timeline is definitely by 2030. We are on the timeline of 2025. We have a lot of days and years just to accomplish that, because that's a global affair. And the operators, civil society, and everybody has to agree upon it, and then only that will be something which can be use case studies for the masses at large. Thank you for watching it out. Have a great day ahead.